There were flowers on the coffin. His mother was in the front row. His sister was crying. The pastor was 3 minutes into the eulogy. And the man they were burying Pa's twos walked through the door. Not as a ghost. Not as a memory. In a coat. Slightly out of breath. Like he'd been running. His name was Donald Miller Jr. He had been legally declared dead by an Ohio court 7 years earlier. He had a death certificate. He had a grave marker. The state had processed his death, closed his records, and moved on. Pause once and he was standing at his own funeral. But here is the part that no documentary, no news segment, no viral post about this story has ever properly explained to you. What happened next, in that courtroom, in that judge's office, in the halls of a legal system that had no idea what to do, is one of the most bizarre, disturbing, and quietly terrifying stories in modern American legal history. Because the real horror of this story is not that a man came back from the dead. It's what the law said when he did. Welcome to Crime Crypt. This is where we don't just tell you what happened. We take the case apart piece by piece until you understand something the headline never told you. Today's case file is the story of Donald Miller Jr., a man from rural Ohio who disappeared in 1986, was declared legally dead in 1994, and then walked back into a courtroom in 2013 to ask the judge to reverse his death certificate. And the judge said no. Pause once, he said no. A living, breathing, talking human being stood in front of a judge, and the judge looked at him and said, "Legally, I cannot help you. You are dead. And there is nothing I can do about it." By the end of this video, you are going to understand 3 things. Why the law put Donald Miller in a position where being alive made his life worse than being dead. What a legal concept called the Lazarus syndrome does to a person's identity, their money, their rights. And most importantly, why this is not just one man's story. The same legal mechanism that trapped Donald Miller is still active in all 50 American states and most of the UK today. This case is not a curiosity. It is a warning. Let's open the file. Donald Miller Jr. was born in 1953 in Hancock County, Ohio. By the early 1980s he was married, working a blue-collar job, and struggling. His marriage was breaking down. Child support payments were mounting. He owed money he didn't have to people he couldn't avoid. In 1986, Donald Miller did what a certain type of desperate man does. He vanished. No note. No forwarding address. No goodbye. He walked away from his life in Ohio and disappeared so completely that for years nobody could find him. Not his family. Not the courts pursuing him for unpaid child support. Not the state. Now, when a person disappears in America, there is a legal process for what happens next. If someone has been missing for a continuous period, typically 5 to 7 years with no confirmed contact and no evidence of life, a court can declare that person legally dead. It is called an in absentia declaration of death. And it exists for a very practical reason. Families need to move on. Estates need to be settled. Insurance needs to be claimed. Bank accounts need to be closed. Life does not stop because a person disappears. So in 1994, 8 years after Donald Miller vanished, his wife Robin went to court. And a judge in Hancock County, Ohio officially declared Donald Miller Jr. dead. Pa's death certificate issued. Case closed. The state moved on. His wife used the life insurance money to rebuild her life. She eventually remarried. His children grew up. The child support debt, which had been the reason he ran in the first place, was erased. Because you cannot collect debt from a dead man. And somewhere out there in America, Donald Miller was very much alive. Living under the radar. Staying quiet. Letting the world believe he was gone. Microhook beat at 420, music shifts slightly darker. Voiceover drops half a register. For 19 years, that arrangement worked. Then something changed. And in 2005, Donald Miller for reasons that are still not entirely clear, decided. Stop. Because I need you to understand what I'm about to tell you. Not just as a strange story, but as a real legal reality that exists in the country you live in right now. Donald Miller went to court. He stood there. He showed them his face. He showed them his ID. He brought witnesses who confirmed he was alive. The judge could see him breathing. And the judge said, "I cannot reverse this declaration." Pause twos. Not because the judge was cruel. Not because the judge was incompetent. But because of a specific provision in Ohio Revised Code, a law that stated plainly that a court could only reverse a declaration of death if the reversal request was made within 3 years of the original declaration. Donald Miller's declaration was made in 1994. He was applying in 2013. 19 years had passed. He was outside the window. By 3 years? No. By 16 years. The law, the actual written law, gave Judge Alan Davis no mechanism to bring Donald Miller back to life. His hands were tied. Not by cruelty, not by bureaucracy, not by error. By the literal text of the statute. Judge Davis reportedly told Miller directly, and these are paraphrased from documented court proceedings, "I don't know what to do with you." He said he had never seen anything like it in his entire career on the bench. And here is what that meant in practice. In real, daily life. Donald Miller, a man you could shake hands with, who had a heartbeat, who ate breakfast that morning, could not get a social security card. Could not get a driver's license. Could not open a bank account. Could not legally work. Could not access any government benefit. Could not, in the eyes of the state, exist. Pause. He was a living ghost. Breathing. Walking. And legally nowhere. Now, you might be thinking, surely there was an appeal. Surely another court. Surely a lawyer found a workaround. Surely the state legislature. And yes, eventually, years later, Ohio would quietly update its laws to give courts more flexibility in exactly these situations. A direct result, legal scholars note, of the Donald Miller case. But that did not help Donald Miller in 2013. In that courtroom. On that day. He walked out of the Hancock County Probate Court the same way he walked in. Dead. But here is what the news reports don't tell you. Because the legal ruling is only one part of this case. There is a second layer to what happened to Donald Miller. And it is the layer that explains why he waited so long. Why he didn't come back sooner. Why his return, when it finally came, was so complicated. To understand it, we have to talk about the money. When Donald Miller was declared dead in 1994, his wife Robin collected on a life insurance policy. We do not know the exact amount, the detail was never made public. But we know it existed. We know it was paid out. And we know that Robin used that money entirely legally, because as far as the state was concerned, her husband was dead, to move forward with her life. She remarried. She built a new home. She raised their children. Everything she did was legal. Everything the insurance company did was legal. The court that issued the death certificate was acting within its authority. So when Donald Miller came back, what did that mean for the insurance payout? Pause. This is where it gets complicated in a way that most people don't think about. If you are declared dead, your estate is settled. Debts are cleared. Assets are distributed. Insurance is paid. When you come back, do you have a legal claim to reclaim what was paid out in your name? Do your old debts come back? Does your old marriage, legally dissolved by your death, somehow reassert itself? The answer, in Donald Miller's case, was effectively nothing. He had no claim. Because he was dead. Because the court that could have reversed that status had no legal mechanism to do so. He couldn't sue for the insurance money. He couldn't reclaim his identity. He couldn't even, in the eyes of the law, be the plaintiff in a lawsuit. Because plaintiffs must be living persons, and Donald Miller, per Ohio court record, was not. Legal scholars who reviewed this case described it as a perfect legal trap. A man who had, through his own actions, through his own disappearance, created a situation so tangled that the law, designed to protect the living, had no road back for him. And then there was the child support. But here is the question nobody in the media asked loudly enough: if the court were to reverse his death declaration and declare him legally alive, would the child support debt come back? His children were adults by 2013. The debt was decades old. But the legal mechanism for reinstating it was unclear. And that uncertainty, that quiet, unspoken financial terror, may have been part of why Donald Miller took so long to come back in the first place. He had calculated, perhaps, that being legally dead was better than being legally alive and in debt. And now, the detail that almost every report about this case missed entirely. When Judge Alan Davis declined to reverse Donald Miller's death declaration in 2013, he did not just send Miller home empty-handed. He noted, in his ruling, that the legislature, the Ohio state government, had the power to fix this. That the courts were bound by the statute as written. But that nothing stopped lawmakers from rewriting the statute. The ruling was reported as a curiosity. A legal oddity. Man declared dead, court can't help. People shared it online. It went mildly viral. And then the news cycle moved on. Here is what almost nobody reported. The same year, 2013, the Ohio legislature did quietly amend the relevant section of the Ohio Revised Code. They extended the window for reversing death declarations. They added provisions for exactly the type of situation Donald Miller had found himself in. The law changed. Specifically because of him. His case became, without fanfare, without a press release, without anyone really noticing, the legal precedent that reformed how Ohio handles declarations of death. Donald Miller's living death changed the law. Not with a lawsuit. Not with a campaign. Just by showing up. But here is the final thing I need you to sit with. Donald Miller, by most accounts, was not declared dead by accident. He was declared dead because he ran. Because he abandoned his family. Because he chose to disappear rather than face his responsibilities. The legal trap he found himself in was, at least in part, a consequence of the choices he made in 1986. And yet, the system that was supposed to handle his return had no answer for him. A man who wanted to re-enter society, who wanted to pay taxes, work legally, exist, was told by a court that the paperwork said he couldn't. The question this case leaves open, and it is not a comfortable one, is this: how many other people are out there right now, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, who have been declared dead and don't know how to come back? Who are living in the legal gray zone between identity and absence? Whose paperwork has outlived their choices? We don't have a number. The system doesn't track them. Because officially, they don't exist. Donald Miller's death declaration was eventually resolved. Ohio's amended law gave him a path, a narrow one, a slow one, but a path to reclaim his legal identity. As of the last public records available, he was working through the process. He is still alive. As far as the state of Ohio is now concerned, officially. If you stayed with me until now, you already know what this channel is. We don't recap. We don't dramatize. We open the file and we go through it until we find the thing nobody else found. New case file every week. If this is the kind of investigation you want, hit subscribe. And make sure the bell is on. Because what we are covering next, I genuinely don't know how to prepare you for it. Next week's case file involves a man who did not disappear. He did the opposite. He made himself very, very visible. He sat in the front row at the funerals. He gave interviews to journalists. He helped organize the search parties. He did all of this because he had calculated, correctly, for 11 years, that the best place to hide is in plain sight. 6 victims. 11 years. And the thing that finally caught him was not DNA. It was not a witness. It was not a surveillance camera. It was a guest book. The case file is waiting. I'll see you then.